Words aren't the only way.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
I love it. Square Enix obviously loves it. And I think Britt Baron likes it a lot too. Last year, back when I first met Britt at the TCG Con signing, because it's me, of course, I just had to suggest words aren't the only way or words aren't the only thing. You know, there's slight variations sometimes depending on the translation used. I just had to suggest that to her. Of course, that was the first thing I thought of, right? She actually used it because she didn't really have an idea for what quote would be best to sign with. It's from the original Final Fantasy VII, but it's still so good and so meaningful. When she gets to that place in the recording and her studio session, hopefully then she can understand why us fans love the quote and the scene so much. Besides "this guy are sick," I cannot think of another line in Final Fantasy VII that is so iconic. The implications of this line are deep, given that Cloud and Tifa had just taken a dip in the livestream not too long before that in the game, in which Tifa rebuilds Cloud back piece by piece into the Cloud she knew, the Cloud from Nibelheim. It's thanks to her that he's even able to go on. The planet knows that Tifa is the right one for this job. After she gets a peek into Cloud's mind and they establish this great spiritual connection, what's next for them? Of course, a love scene. Naturally, we need these for every couple in media. Apart from the livestream sequence, it is my next most anticipated scene when Final Fantasy VII returns and Remake Part 3. The level of intimacy that you experience with Tifa in the original game is determined by the dating affection mechanic. Now, in the version we all know and love, of course, Tifa falls to her knees and asks the party on the Highwind, "Were you watching?" And in the lower affection version, the conversation with Cloud underneath the Highwind is a little more reserved and not as emotionally charged. It changes to "were you listening" instead of "were you watching." So yes, in the lower affection version, it leaves a little bit more to be desired, like something is missing, almost like you failed your relationship with Tifa, as if you were supposed to really climb to that higher affection level. And I'll explain why. Now, I know what a lot of you might say. Well, this is why the love triangle debate rages on to this day, because of choices like that you can make in the original game, or the fact that you don't need to get Tifa's affection meter all the way up to beat the game. And since you can play it like that, obviously you can choose whether Cloud really loves Tifa or Aerith. But I believe that's always been more of a gaming mechanic, and as time has gone on, I don't think it matters as much to the overall narrative of Final Fantasy VII. Advent Children came out, Last Order, the choice was already clear. But even if we don't consider the compilation or any of those pieces of media, I definitely believe that the remake trilogy has made it clear who Cloud, the character, really keeps close to his heart, how Cloud really feels. Keeping it seemingly open-ended for Cloud as a character wouldn't really make sense anymore. And let's face it, the narrative, to me, that sort of plot thread really, it wouldn't hit home as hard if Cloud is just kind of lukewarm to Tifa's affections, right? Heck, in Remake Part 1, a lot of scenes with Tifa have been introduced and never existed in the original game, or were added on top of scenes where you as Cloud are forced, or not forced, but you as Cloud already make the decision to basically take the Tifa route. Such as when he gives Tifa the flower. Personally, for me, I knew in that moment that, wow, they're not playing around anymore. Like, Remake really is going all out with the Cloti, and it was a done deal. And something I wanted to add about the rebirth date sequence that I love so much is that in that scene, Tifa is giving him the hint of her feelings, but not quite saying what she means. She suggests them. She thinks that maybe she's getting too ahead of herself. The Cloud lets her know with action that no, she's not getting too ahead of herself. He pulls her in, and then in the high affection version, he pulls her in for a kiss. So that shows that Cloud is a man of action, and Tifa knows that. That's why the Highwind sequence is such a great follow-up to that. And even if it didn't happen in your playthrough, or if it did, Cloud is still a man of action. Sure, he's not that great with words when it comes to feelings, but he is a man of action. He's strategic in battle. He knows how to move. I'll be remiss if I didn't say that Cloud wasn't a man of action when it came to Tifa and their relationship. So, without question, words are not the only way. Even without the optional date sequences that you can get in Rebirth, and yes, they're all an option, but all of them show Cloud's relationship with each character. Barring all those, you have the intense and riveting Gongaga sequence that ends in an almost kiss. You have the conflict between Calm and Junon that Cloud and Tifa go through together. This is why it wouldn't make sense to me to have an apathetic or non existent Highwind sequence, because it's part of the emotional catharsis for the two characters. And now it's time for them to physically be able to express that love, which is why I have so much appreciation for it. No, it's not just because of, sexy time, but just because it's necessary for them and it makes sense. They've had all this tension built up between them, and boy, is there a lot of that in the remake trilogy shown, which could not have been shown in their pixelated forms back in the day. This has been a buildup that naturally seeks a release. The high affection version does give the impression that something more did occur. And if we dig deeper into the scene and look at the development process of it, you'll start to wonder to yourself, is this scene gonna get a glow up, or is this scene gonna get revamped in the way it is portrayed? Because let's face it, games do show a lot more, let me say, mature content nowadays. And I think that the original idea for the Highwind sequence does have a chance of being implemented. Now, both the live stream sequence and the Highwind sequence have an interesting backstory, because neither one were originally written by Kazushige Nojima. Masato Kato, one of the Squaresoft legends at the time, who wrote the entire story of the legendary Chrono Trigger, was brought on to Final Fantasy VII originally to take care of the more minor story beats. But he ended up giving these two major scenes a shot, and they ended up keeping what he wrote for the livestream sequence, but what he drafted for the Highwind sequence was considered a little too risque. Now, in an interview that we all love to quote, Kitase said, "The event on the airship the night before the final battle was done by Kato as well, wasn't it?" Nojima: "Oh, the bit with that risque slash suggestive dialogue? I wasn't the one who wrote that. That was Kato too." Interviewer: "Words aren't the only way to tell someone how you feel. That line, right? That's a rather mature conversation for a Final Fantasy game." Kitase: "Although I remember we had to tone down a version that was too strong." And Nojima states, "The original idea was more extreme. The plan was for Cloud to walk out of the Chocobo stable in the airship, followed by Tifa leaving while she kept looking around, but Kitase rejected it. But I think perhaps no one expected that line to be so important." Laughs. They kept Tifa's line in, which would become iconic, a favorite of many fans. And as for the Chocobo stable sequence, personally, I have this strange feeling that they might bring it back. I don't think they need to show anything explicit, or even show nudity a la Final Fantasy XVI between Clive and Jill, although I thought that was a great sequence and I'd love something like that for Cloud and Tifa. But the implication can be there. Because I don't know, what was the point of adding in the train roll anyway, if you're not going to get us to think about that? I don't think Square Enix is going to forget about this line or leave this line out in the cold either, because this line is often referenced or used or can be found in several Final Fantasy related spin off games, such as Dissidia NT, one which I played like 500 hours of, and Final Fantasy War of the Visions Brave Exvius, just to name a few. This line will be in the third part for sure. You don't have to worry about that. The question is how they will animate this scene and how deep they're going to go, and whether Tifa's going to come out of a chocobo stable or not. So the challenge for me is to really think of ways that they'll end up animating it, and I can only really think of a scenario A or scenario B. Chocobo stable versus non-chocobo stable, because the high affection scene is perfect as is, and the tilting of the camera upwards, fading into black, cinematically still holds weight and gives you that same implication of a love scene. Now, let's face it, Final Fantasy VII has never been rated mature in any game or any compilation entry, and they're not going to start now. So while I would love a Clive and Jill-esque scene because they took the blueprint from Cloud and Tifa, I think we'll be lucky to get it. I think we'll be lucky to get a scene of them cuddling and the slight hint of skin. I would be very surprised. And if that happens, great. That would be awesome. But if it doesn't, I'm prepared. However, you cannot hide certain implications with voice acting and full facial animation. You just cannot. That's what I'm looking forward to the most, just to see the scene in whatever way that they choose to portray it. It's going to get across the same message. 3 years ago, I actually recorded my own rendition of the Highwind sequence with my good friend from Canada, Lex Tan, who is a radio show host there. We both met through a mutual love of Final Fantasy VII, and we thought, since we both act, why not give it a shot? Because as far as we knew, there hadn't been that many voiced takes. We wanted to give it our own little rendition, our own little flair, and even though we don't have the same vocal tone as Britt Baron and Cody Christian do, I hope you can see the emotions we put into the lines. That's why I love the high affection version so much, because the conversation is deep, the stakes are high, and they're both realizing that you don't need many words. Cloud realizes that the more things change, the more they end up being the same, basically. I hope you guys enjoy it.
What are you gonna do, Tifa?
Did you forget? I'm all alone. I don't have anywhere to go. Everyone's gone.
Yeah. We don't have anywhere or anyone to go home to.
Yeah, you're right. But I'm sure someday they'll come back, don't you think?
I wonder. Everyone has something irreplaceable they're holding on to. But this time, our opponent.
You can also find the full version in the link above on my acting channel. Just check out Christiana Sula and you can find it there. Hope you enjoy. I'm really looking forward to that Highwind sequence. So, are you looking forward to that Highwind sequence? I think we all are. Not looking forward to it? That's okay too. Let me know your feelings in the comment section below. And as always, what do we say? Tana Greek Knows over and out.